Hello everyone, I'm back in my trusty Web Manuals hoodie, and now it's time for the summer release. We actually planned on releasing it at the end of August, but we decided to move it to September to do a little bit of extra testing because this is quite a large release. So please, this is gonna be a long one, so have a seat, fasten your seatbelt because it's time for takeoff. So let's talk about the improvements first. The first thing is something a lot of you has asked for, and now it's finally here, because now you're able to create multiple abbreviations with the same acronym. So when you're writing anything that can be interpreted as an abbreviation, then you'll get the suggestion of the already existing abbreviation, but you'll also get the create new abbreviation functionality available. So now you can create abbreviations even on top of ones you already have, which should make it easier for a lot of you who's got the same acronym for different abbreviations. Moving on, you can now remove the watermark on print. A lot of you needed the watermark with the dates on print, and some of you did not need it, so you wanted it away. So now we have added an admin function that allows you to go in and remove the timestamps, or at least choose if the timestamps should be shown in the watermarks when you're printing. And at the same time, we also added watermarks that allows the printed documents to contain the username of the person printing. This can also be activated in admin under system settings, documents, and general. So a little bit of extra features for you who are printing to PDF or just printing straight from the reader. Also another thing, you can now search for shortcodes under Manage Documents, meaning that you can go in under Manage Documents and the columns for shortcodes will now be sortable and searchable. So now it's going to be easier for you to find the documents you need even from the shortcodes. And in the same area, the shortcode columns have been added in Manage Categories views, meaning that if you set them up to be displayed under admin, then the shortcode columns will now be correctly made and you will now be able to sort on them. Moving on, a document can now be locked when sent for review. This is a feature that's been asked by specific countries that they need it with their CAA, and of course you should have that. So in admin you can decide to activate a lock on review, and then when pages are sent or a document is sent for review, then you can the admin can check it to be locked while the review is happening. When the review is happening, then pages can no longer be drafted or edited, and the pages are not unlocked until either the review is complete or until the admin or editor decides this should actually not be locked anymore. We'll open it and work on it because we missed something. So you can activate this feature under Site Settings and Documents. And now a very, very requested feature, signatures in forms. Something a lot of you have asked for, especially during Go Digital and the Innovation Workshop, and now we're finally getting it. A signature field can now be added to forms. So when the user's filling in the form, the user can click the signature field or click an assigned sign button. And when they do that, a signature pad will open up and you can sign on it if you have a touch screen, or you can draw on it if you don't. And with that, your form will now contain that signature. And to see that from the admin view in the registry, you can go in and you will be able to see that the form has been signed. There will be a little bit tick mark on the signature column. So now you know if the form has actually been signed by the user. Moving on, also in the range of forms, quiz answers are now stored, meaning that they are stored in the browser, allowing the reader to fill in a part of the quiz, then move to other pages, come back and fill in the rest of the quiz. So the quiz will no longer just forget everything if you move on and come back. Also in the reader, document icons will now have a different color scheme depending if they've been published or not. This is important for editors and reviewers, of course, because they are the ones who will see the change. But it means that if an editor is in the reader and they see a document and they don't understand why other readers won't see it, well, it's because it's not published, and they'll be able to see that now because the document icon will have a different color corresponding if it's been published or not. Moving on, when editing a user, the send welcome email choice will be hidden because it doesn't make sense when you're just editing the user settings. And a thing that's been asked from quite a few customers as well, exporting a list of users from Manage Users will now include a comma-separated list of user types and roles connected to the individual users. This should give your user management outside of web manuals a much better perspective, and it really should help you out on your future endeavors. Moving on to tasks. When opening a task view, the default setting will now be the pending tasks instead of all tasks. We feel like it makes a lot more sense because when you jump in to see your task, you don't want to see all the tasks that are available and has ever been done. You want to see the ones that you want to work on right now. We're just trying to save you a few clicks. And then moving on again, documents set to be not available will now have a unique icon in Managed Categories. And this is just to clarify if you have any inactive documents, instead of the documents looking like normal documents and you don't really know if they're shown or not or displayed or not unless you actually click in on them. So that should help you out to just get a top view. And then moving on again, when archiving a document, and that document is connected to multiple categories. We had an issue where people didn't really know unless they went and checked if that document was connected to any other categories. Now the system will present a warning and give the user the ability to change the categories the document is actually distributed to. This way you don't end up in that uncomfortable situation where you archive a document and then realized it was used in many different categories. So that should be a really high step up for when you are managing a lot of documents distributed in a lot of categories. But wait, there is more! Paragraph text in table cells can now be aligned in the designer. This allows everybody with access to designs to adjust how the text in table cells should actually be handled and positioned. Also, for the spell checker, we added 2 extra languages, Czech and Polish. And another thing for the editors, reviewer comment statuses for previous revisions can now be updated on a page level. This is something that's been requested for people who do not update the review comments on the specific revisions they're given, but for future revisions. And now you're able to do that. So in future revisions, you can actually go in and mark those review comments as done. This is something that needs to be enabled, and it can be done under document settings. So moving on again, when an admin is changing the password for a user and selects generate password, the send welcome email tick box will automatically be selected by the system because it does not make sense that you are generating a password and not sending a welcome email. So we're trying to automate that a little bit. When exporting user performance to Excel, the role that the user performance is based on will now be included in the data, meaning that you can see which role you actually exported for in the Excel sheet. So if you export 20 different Excel sheets for different roles, you can actually see on the top which roles it's connected to. That should make it a lot easier to maintain for future usage. And multiple text editing functions has been added to the compliance editor. We did this to make it comparable to the manual editing tool, but also to make life a lot easier for everybody building their own compliance libraries. And in Manage Users, the username and last name columns should no longer collide. In case the names are too large for the columns, a balloon with the complete name from the field will be triggered by just hovering over the name, and you'll see everything that it actually entails. And the last one of our improvements, in the reader, the document categories view will now be larger to allow for even more information to be displayed. And now, to the scourge of our testers, the bug fixes. The character less than or equal to will no longer block a page from scrolling up or down, which is quite useful if you're using that character. Also, the announcement user performance history will no longer disappear if the user it is connected to is deleted. So it will actually keep the history even though we remove the user it was connected to. Also, reader content pages containing lists will now display the complete data in the print overview. So if you make a content page with a list of data, then you will actually be able to print said data instead of only printing the first bit that you can see on the screen. More in the reader, the document view will now adhere to the settings applied in the admin, meaning that code, issue, and publish date will now be displayed in columns if so selected, which is quite nifty, that you will actually see the things you are requesting. Yes? Compliance requirements can now be set to have no owner, even after they've had an owner assigned. So they start with no owner. Before you could add an owner, but you couldn't go back to having no owner. You can now do that. And indented lists will now correctly continue with the correct list level on the following pages. Meaning that if we are indented to level 3 and we go to the next page or break off to the next page, we'll actually start on level 3 as well. This should help a lot of you so you don't have to indent yourselves. And to keep up with this, the PDF export has been updated to also adhere to the indented lists and allow them to follow up correctly and not have blank characters to carry the indentation. Moving on to Manage Users. In the Manage Users, the Send Warning Email button will only show if the user has access to actually send warning emails. Before, it would be there, they could click it, but nothing would happen. So it's just making the system a little bit cleaner, showing what you actually can do. Moving on to Manage Users. In Manage Users, the Send Warning Email button will only show if the user has access to send warning emails, which makes sense. Before, it would show, but if they clicked it, nothing would happen. So now, just to make the UI a little clearer, the button just won't be active. Also in Manage Users, under Assign Documents, the Send Warning Email button will not be displayed if the warning email template is deactivated on the site. If you don't have a template or a way to send out warning emails, you shouldn't have a button for it. Also, just a general blanket fix, we are now supporting downloading of files larger than 2 GB, which should be quite positive for a few of you. And moving on, manuals with a dash in the manual name will no longer get incorrect revision bars for the page number. Before, if you had a dash, for some reason, there would be a little revision bar there, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. Back to Manage Users. Users can no longer be imported with an empty email field. You need an email to drive the user to send the emails. So when you're importing users, just to make it easier and clearer, now you'll actually get a message saying, well, this field should be filled in from your imported data. Also, the diagram editor will now use more correct fonts and colors, just a smaller upgrade there. And we resolved an issue that caused site settings to not save. There's a few cases where site settings wouldn't save correctly, and it's now fixed. Also, in the reader, the unread announcements will now be displayed correctly in the dashboard. Before, it would count 1 off. That should be correct. And besides that, we solved a good handful of issues with the scroll bars that caused them to not be completely correct. And then last, but very much not least, we are finally getting the long-awaited upgrade to the CK editor. So no more double arrows in tables with vertically merged cells. So that whole double arrow where you mark the entire cell by mistake should be good. You can now even go in from the top or sides and you won't get that pesky double arrow. That's all I had for you today. That was a long one. I hope you enjoyed it. If something struck a note in you, please go test it out. And if you're still awaiting something, we always have another release in a month. Again, we're looking forward to seeing you at Go Digital in September in 2 weeks here in Sweden. And if you can't make that, please consider the Go Digital in APAC in Singapore in the beginning of November. Have a good one.